I will say this. I hope that never in my life do I ever experience anything as exciting as this. So that's what I was doing a week ago. Isn't that something? Like I said, I'm good though. For a couple of days, I was amazingly sore. Sure, in my arm from the dog hitting me. But every bone in my body, every joint in my body was just exhausted. Kind of like you went to the gym and stayed twice as long, two times longer than you should have, and you just did too much. Or you went on a 10-mile hike, and the longest hike you'd been on for the whole year is a 1-mile hike. And everything I read is is it cortisol? I think it's a hormone that goes through your body. It's part of the fight or flee response that your body has. It lets you do extraordinary things for a finite period of time. And I certainly did extraordinary things for a finite period of time that allowed me to survive that attack. However, for the next couple of days, it felt like I had been attacked by a dog. I felt bad. I felt sore. I was just worn out. A couple of days after that, though, I was fine. I'm 100% now, and life is good. Which leads us now to the new year. And how many times have you heard, 2021 was horrible. It was just as bad as 2020. 2022 is going to suck too. It's going to be awful. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be unbelievably bad. I say no, 2021 was not a bad year. It was a challenging year. It was a difficult year. It was a year in which you had to make a lot of different changes to accomplish the goals you want to accomplish, but it wasn't a bad year. In 2022, I have no doubt that it's going to be a better year. Why do I say that? Because in many ways, my entire life, every year has been better than the last. That's not to say that bad things haven't happened. That's not to say that we haven't had disappointments. That's not to say we haven't fallen short as an individual, as a family, as a people, as a nation, as a world, as a society. But things on the whole are very good. And I read an essay by an author, former politician, not politician, I guess she worked for politicians. She was a speech writer for Ronald Reagan. Peggy Noonan, those of you that know her, she's written several books. I've read them. She is a op-ed reporter. She writes editorials for the Wall Street Journal, okay? And I'm not a big fan of editorials for any publication. I really don't care what those types of people think, except for her. Peggy Noonan is always upbeat. She's positive. Nothing is doom and gloom with her. If she talks about 3 things that are bad, she will include 3 things that are good. Or 3 things that are bad, she'll include 6 things that are good. She's like me. She's a glass half full person. And she wrote an editorial. This had to do with a guy. His name is, I don't want to mispronounce it, Amjad Masad, okay? And he's an immigrant from Amman, Jordan. In fact, he came to the United States in 2012. Why did he come? Well, he's a Palestinian, like his father. And while he was in Jordan, his father bought him when he was 6 years old a computer. And Amjad fell in love with computers and discovered his true calling. He just wanted to be a computer guy from age 6 in Amman, Jordan. He studied the history of computers. He became enamored with the United States and Silicon Valley. He imagined the latter, Silicon Valley, as a futuristic place with flying cars and floating buildings. Then he saw a movie in 1999 called The Pirates of Silicon Valley. And it was basically the life story of Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and those guys. And he thought, you know what? That's where I need to be. And at that moment, he said, I'm going to the United States. I'm going to be there. Okay. So he landed at JFK Airport in January of 2012. made it in Manhattan, was fine, settled up in New York. He worked for some software people, and he thought, you know what, New York's fine, but that's not where the software thing is. He said he needed to move to Silicon Valley because that was his dream. So he did it. Worked for more startups, learned more. 5 years ago, he became the co-founder and CEO of a software company called Replint. That's a company that offers tools to learn programming. His company has 40 full-time people and 10 contractors. Now, Tuesday afternoon of last week, Mr. Mossad, who became a citizen, U.S. citizen in 2019, thought about the 10th anniversary of his arrival in the U.S. He was so grateful for three things: a company, a family, and a house. That's what he was grateful for. Now, before we move on, think back. Okay, what was he thankful for? That he's a multimillionaire? I don't know that that's the case. I assume since he has a company in Silicon Valley, he's at least successful. But the three things he's thankful for: a company, a family, a house. Now, most of those listening to the sound of my voice on this podcast have the same thing. Maybe not a company that they own, but a company that they work for, unless they're fortunate enough to be retired from a company that enabled them to earn a living, save money, and be retired. A family, everybody has family, friends. Everybody has family, folks. Even if you're not married with children, you still have family. Even if you don't have blood relatives living with you, friends can be just as much family as blood. And a house, I, again, will say virtually everybody, if not everybody, listen to this podcast, has a roof over their head. And even on this cold January 1st morning, are warm and toasty. Now, Mr. Mossad and his wife, they're just grateful. His wife and business partner, in fact, he got married to another Jordanian nationalist. Her name is Haya Aden. They started talking about America. And he posted a thread on Twitter that Peggy Noonan reports on. And it was so telling. And I'm going to go ahead and quote what Mr. Mossad had to say. He said, "I landed in the United States 10 years ago with nothing but credit card debt. After one startup exit, one big tech job, one unicorn, I genuinely believe that it wouldn't have been possible anywhere else in the world except for the United States." And he goes on to say, here are 10 things that I love about this country. And pay close attention to these, because I think we take this stuff for granted. This guy who grew up in Jordan did not, and we can learn from people like that. Number one, work ethic. Mr. Mossad said, "The first thing I noticed is that everybody in the United States, regardless of occupation, regardless as to what they did, took pride in doing a bang-up job, even when nobody looked." And early on, I asked people, why do you pour everything into a job when it seems to be thankless? And this, Mr. Mossad said, was like asking a fish, what is water? It just is. That's just what they do. That's just what we do in this country. Okay. Number two, something else we take for granted. Mr. Mossad said, the lack of corruption in this country. Now, those of you on the conspiracy theory websites, you those who are QAnon people, don't know, what are we talking about? This whole country is ran by the deep state and the Illuminati and everything's corrupt. Stop it. Mr. Mossad, who has seen corruption, said, in the 10 years I've been here in the U.S., I have never been asked for a bribe. And that's surprising. When you know what you predictably, when you know that you predictably will get to keep a sizable portion of the value you create and that no one will arbitrarily stop you, it makes it easier to be ambitious. The fact that nobody offered this guy a bribe was mind-boggling to him because of where he came from. I've never been offered a bribe to do anything. Have you? It just doesn't happen in this country. So shut up about the corruption. Again, are we perfect here? No. But compared to any place else, we're unbelievably uncorrupt. Number 3, the win-win mindset. People don't try to screw you on deals. They play the long game. They align incentives in such a way that everybody wins. This is especially apparent in Silicon Valley, where you can't underestimate anyone because one day you might be working for them. And I can't speak for the tech industry in Silicon Valley, but I can speak for manufacturing. I would say, I am going to honestly say nobody has ever been out to screw me in a deal. I will say there are people who have weighted deals in their favor, drastically in their favor. And there have been times when people have made commitments and they've later on backed out of them in some way, shape, or form. But for the most part, more than 99% of the time, people want to work with you and they want you to make something. They want them to make something because if it works, then you go back to the well and you do it again. When you do a business deal, no one's out to screw you. They may want a bigger percentage of the pie than you want or that you want to give them. Just say no and negotiate something better. That's not trying to screw. That's not trying to steal. That's just negotiation, okay? People in this country truly do have, vast majority of the people in this country have a win-win mindset. Number 4, rewarding talent. Mr. Mossad says that from sports to engineering, America is obsessed with properly rewarding talent. If you're good, you'll get recognized. The market for talent is dynamic. And if you don't feel valued today, you can find a better place tomorrow. And that is true. Friends, if you think that company couldn't do without me, I'm the most important person in that company, and they won't pay me, guess what? Chances are you're not as valuable and important and smart and an integral part of the big enough cog in the wheel as you think you are, okay? Because most all companies that I know reward their people. And if they don't, those people understand that and they go down the street. And the reason I believe companies reward their people is because they have two choices. They can reward their good people, or they can have their good people go to work for the competition. Which do you think they'd rather do? Number 5, and this is an interesting one. America is open to weirdos because you never know where the next tech, sports, or arts innovation will come from. America had to be open to weirdness. Weirdos thrive without being crushed in America. America employs people with the most interesting backgrounds, from dropouts to artists. They're awesome. And that's true, because look at the way things are done. I mean, the things that didn't even exist 10 years ago rule the roost today. If 10, 15 years ago I told you, what if we did this? Hey, you know that company that lets you buy books online? They're going to start selling everything to anyone, and they're going to go and deliver it for free. You'd have laughed at me. Well, they do that now. It's called Amazon. I mean, 40 years ago, a computer that filled a whole room, well, you can use something, a computer with with enough memory to do everything you needed to do filled a whole room. Now that computer is so small, you can hold it in your hand and use it while you're pooping. I mean, it's called a phone. Well, we call it a phone. It's really a computer. But the weirdos in this country aren't stifled. They're not put into prison. They're not barred from anything. America is open to weirdos. You are judged on what you do, not who you are. What did Dr. King say? Judge by the content of my character, not the color of my skin. Same. Okay. Number 6, forgiveness. Weird and innovative people have to put themselves out there. And as part of that, they're going to make mistakes in public. The culture in America here values